Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. This is a great podcast to listen to. This guest that I have, he is a New York Times best-selling author. Oh yeah, he was a retired Navy SEAL commander, and he's probably one of the most ambitious entrepreneurs I've ever seen. I've used his 8 weeks to SEAL Fit. He has the mindset that you really want to listen to today. Mark Devine, it's so great to have you on.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me. Ambitious entrepreneur. I like that. I've never thought about that myself.
I think that's an understatement with all the things that you've developed, since, I want to go back, actually. You served 20 years, 9 active, 11 reserves. You retired as a Navy SEAL commander. So everybody hears that and they go instantly like, oh man, this guy's tough as nails. Was it harder to go through BUDS or to become an entrepreneur?
BUDS was pretty simple, right? You're basically told what to do every moment of every day. And if you do it and you don't quit, you find yourself after 9 months, wearing a trident. Now, of course, I'm making it sound a little easier than it was probably, but, and the other thing, Rob, is you've got a homogeneous group of individuals who are, all hard chargers, all ambitious, all extremely fit, for the most part, at least they think, strongly desirous to be a Navy SEAL. Or let's just say, to be fair, they are all strongly desirous of being a Navy SEAL, though many of them lack certain attributes, let's just say. So, only maybe 15% make it through. But at the same point, everyone's there. You kind of know what you're working with. Just like if you're a firefighter, you know what you're working with. Whereas when I started my first business, I was working with all, different cats and dogs, and I didn't really know them like I knew my teammates in the SEALs. And in fact, my 2 partners in my first business were my brothers-in-law, my wife's brothers, and I didn't know them at all, and nor should I've ever been in business with them. And it was a complete So I would rather go back to BUDS again than do that.
I love it. I mean, that's, the hardest thing with understanding, I guess, the stresses that a SEAL has on it is to be able to understand the mindset. And I love, one of my favorite books is that The Unbeatable Mind. And talk to me more about actually, so you didn't start with that. You started with, you did start with The Unbeatable Mind. Tell me more about that book and what the premise behind it was.
Sure. Well, let me back up a little bit. So the latter half of my SEAL career, when I was a reserve officer, I was, one of my projects was to, they brought me in to help run or design and run a really complicated training program we called CERTX, which is to certify deploying squadrons, SEAL squadrons. And we, for the first time in 2004, we designed these to be scenario-driven, intelligence-driven, because we're now hunting human beings. And it was different than the way that we had deployed or trained and deployed for combat. And so I went in and I found I had a real penchant for doing that. And so the Navy then hired my company for a few years to run that program. And then the conversation in the early, around that time frame, 2005, 2006, was that we needed more SEALs. And Congress was going to mandate that the Navy basically print 500 more SEALs in 1 year. And the Navy came back and the SEALs said, listen, that's just really a bad idea. You can't mass produce special operators. And the force had only grown by 1 person that year between the guys getting out or getting injured, and retiring versus, the number of people making it through BUDS SEAL training. So they proposed that instead of, just cramming 500 people through the pipeline and reducing standards, which would blow the whole force,
Right.
what we do is create a nationwide program to mentor the candidates before they go to buds to create a better quality input, right, which would increase the output. And it actually worked. So they hired my company to create a nationwide mentoring program for Navy SEAL candidates. Well, guess what? I crushed it. My company, I had 36 SEALs out in all the recruiting districts, and we just crushed it. And the entire contract was stolen from me exactly 1 year after they gave it to me by Blackwater USA, this $1 billion shark.
Yeah.
You've heard of those guys, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Prince. And so I didn't fight it because I was like, you know what? I just obviously didn't belong in that arena. And I'm going to do this my own way by training, individual civilians and not on a government contract. So I launched SEAL Fit. And that also freed me up to do it in a way that I wanted to do it, that I couldn't do it when my hands were tied with the government contract. And I really wanted to bring in a lot of the principles that I had learned and that worked really well for me. So I studied Zen for 4 years before I ever went to Navy SEAL training. I went into SEAL training when I was 25. I turned 26 in buds, but I'd been studying Zen through my martial arts for 4 years, every single day. And it had utterly profound impact on my mind and my mental state, my ability to control, to stay calm under pressure, and to be emotionally connected and present for my team. And I just dominated buds as a result of that. I mean, I knew that and the breathing exercises and the visualization that I had done is all part of that work, that quiet inner work was, allowed me to be honor man in my class. And sure, I had the physical attributes, but that wasn't the main thing. Everyone knows that about SEAL training. It's not, even though you have to have the physical stuff, it's ultimately about the mental and emotional. And so I graduated number one in my class out of only 19 who graduated, of 185 who started. The other thing that's interesting is my entire boat crew graduated with me. So out of 19, 7 of us were a team. Yeah. And that's I don't think it's ever happened before, and it never happened since. But it was because of this training that I had put myself through, and with the guidance of a Japanese master, martial arts and Zen master named Nakamura. So I wanted to teach these candidates that, but I didn't have the same structure. They weren't interested in putting a gi on and training karate, and they didn't want to know about meditation and everything. And so I started these 3-week, actually 30-day long live-in academies. They're like a warrior monk academy. You can think of it like a Shaolin monastery for spec ops candidates. And they were in Encinitas, California, which is my hometown. And so I'd have guys come and live with us at this training center for 30 days. And we trained from 0 dark 30 until 8, 9, 10, 11 at night, sometimes around the clock. And the graduation ceremony is still an event that we run to this day called Kokoro. It's 50 hours. It's kind of like a Hell Week simulation, 50 hours of nonstop training. Hell Week's 5 days, 6 days, 5 nights. This was only 50 days, 3 days, 2 nights, but still, it was the hardest. It's the hardest part of Hell Week is the first 2 days. So we simulated that with expert, Navy SEAL buds instructors as our coaches, and just an incredible experience. You imagine though, I was teaching everything. I built the entire 8 weeks of SEAL Fit training protocol, the operator WODs from those academies. That became a New York Times best-selling book, and those op WODs still form the foundation of our online training. Yeah. And then all the other stuff, all the leadership and team development and mental toughness skills that I innovated there, I took what I had learned and I called it stripping the foo out of the kung fu. So I used these things, I kind of bugged them down into the simplest methodologies and tools, and then I explained it in very practical terms to these young guys. Like instead of talking about the ancient art of pranayama, which is controlling the breath and using breath practices to really develop yourself mentally, I just called it box breathing. But box breathing, it sounds really simple, and it is, but it's a profound practice when you start adding the other elements to it. So I taught them these box breathing practices, which included concentration and visualization, and the arousal control and attention control and mindfulness. And these SEAL candidates were just dominating, not 90% getting through SEAL training, 90%. Wow. And so now in the SEALs, there's probably a few hundred. Now, SEALs are not a big force. There's like 2,000 total. So I'd say 300 or 400 have been trained by me, or some various aspect, either through my events or my books or through my more direct training. And the SEAL Training Center is now utilizing many of the Unbeatable Mind tools, such as box breathing and visualization and whatnot, and mindfulness during SEAL training now. So that's really cool. I feel like that's come full circle. So that's how Unbeatable Mind was developed. Let me kind of be more specific. After a few years, I had a lot of civilians come to me and say, "Hey, listen, we love what you're doing. It's incredible, but I just can't physically do that, and I can't afford to take a month or 3 weeks out of my life. And do you have anything for me that I could, where I could learn this stuff kind of on my own?" And so I thought, well, okay, this is a digital world, and this is 2009, 8 or 9. I said I could put together a digital platform that, where I could let this stuff kind of drip out over the course of a year, using that theme that spec ops are mass produced. Well, Unbeatable Mind is not mass produced. So it's a year-long program. So I built a year-long course, and I called it the Unbeatable Mind Academy. And we still have that course. It's been upgraded twice, but we call it the foundation course. It's phenomenal. And it's basically like absolutely everything that I've ever learned about Navy SEAL badassery, Zen training, advanced yoga practices, meditation, mindfulness, visualization, breath work, as well as an incredible way to help individuals clarify their why and know their purpose, which is one of the main reasons people quit SEAL training or anything hard is they're doing it for the wrong reasons. They're getting the ego in the way. Right. As well as teamwork and leadership. And then I wrote a book based upon that course. And I kept it self-published because I knew that this would be a living program, meaning it was going to evolve as I evolved, and then it would end up being contributed to by the people who are using the program. And then now we have 400 or 500 coaches who are certified or contribute to it. So just like in the military, we keep what works and we shit can what doesn't. We're always iterating and evolving. And it's been a pretty phenomenal experience. So the book, I'm on my 4th edition. I'm going to launch the 4th edition of Unbeatable Mind in September.
I love it.
During the pandemic.
There you go. You had time.
And then it's going to spin into a series. So the next second part of the series will be a book called Uncommon, which is really for younger leaders, to really find their why and to overcome fear and to really just get after it in the marketplace right away, when they're leaving college or entering their first kind of career path. And then we're going to do Unbeatable Leader and Unbeatable Team. So really just kind of taking a different tack at bringing these principles into leadership and team building and organizational work.
Well, and it's great because a lot of the background of your experience, your credibility helps for individuals to understand the greater need for this. I love when, one thing I loved about Unbeatable Mind was it was about the whole person. It was not just training like the physical side or the mental side, but like you were saying, it's everything. I want to go back when you said that your whole boat crew passed. Why do you think that was?
I've thought about that. I really think that the Zen training, really, in Japanese tradition, they say it's kills your ego. It doesn't really kill your ego. It kills your attachment to your identity as a thinker, right? And what I mean by that is you develop this sense that there's more to you than just your thoughts and emotions, and you create a space between thoughts and emotions and what I call the witness. And I describe that in my book, Unbeatable Mind, obviously. So you cultivate this connection with your spiritual center, let's call it, the witness, and then that becomes your seat of awareness, and you make decisions from that perspective. And they're much, much more grounded because they're connected to your heart. In fact, the reason I use that term kokoro for that 50-hour event is because kokoro means to merge your heart and your mind into your actions. So when I showed up at SEAL training, I had already been training kokoro for 4 years and training to be not reactionary and not caught up and identified with my thoughts and emotions. And man, that's like the most powerful course in mental toughness right there. The mental toughness is basically you're able to look at your thoughts and be like, that's not me. And maybe even that thought isn't worthy, right? It's either negative or it's going to lead me down the wrong path. So what is the right thought? And what is the right response in this moment? And how do I chunk that down into an actionable item? That would be a micro goal. And how do I power it with positive energy and with an image that's linked to my why or my purpose or my mission? Mm-hmm. And you train this way until that becomes a real-time, moment-to-moment process that is always with you. And it's extraordinarily powerful. So that's what I brought, some version of that, an early version. I brought that to my team just by the way I showed up. And I didn't make it about me, and I didn't have all the answers. And, I was able to basically unleash the power of the team by empowering them to lead and for me to just to support them. So it sounds a lot like servant leadership before I'd ever heard of that term, but it's more than that. It was also more like presence leadership. I was just present and listening and being a good, just being a good person to them, not like leading with my ego, leading with humility. And like I said, and being willing to admit when I didn't have the answers, or if I was the one that screwed up, being the first one to admit it, and to give everyone, plenty of leash to screw up and to learn from our mistakes. And we ended up, and also I brought these skills, like, we would practice box breathing together, and I would practice, positive mantras with them. We crushed almost everything. Anytime there was a team evolution, we just crushed it. And we even got secured early by 4 hours during Hell Week. And we got to go take like an hour-long shower, get in some dry clothes. And I've got a picture of me in dry clothes out by the team as the team is sitting there shivering and sandy and getting secured by the commanding officer of BUDS. And we're standing behind everyone in these nice dry clothes.
That had to mess with their minds completely.
Well, they were like, well, what they do different, I'm sure. They couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. I love how everything centers around that mindset piece. And in the book, The Way of the Seal, which is another best-selling book, which is not surprising from you, there's something in here that says the perpetual winds of pleasure blow you in one direction, the gusts of pain push you in another. The problem is this keeps you from living your ideal life. I have had that on my desk because it is so true in the fact that, there's so much out there for individuals, not just in the high spec ops community, but individuals just in their daily lives that they don't live their ideal life. What have you found some of the defining differences that you were able to bring to people to help them start that? Well, again, I think that it really all starts with deepening your self-awareness. And that means to commit to daily training and practice. And we call it the training 5 mountain training. And that means to train to integrate physically, mentally, emotionally, intuitionally, and spiritually, or kokoro. Those are the 5 mountains. And so we develop a 5 mountain training plan. And what happens is when you train these different aspects of your being together, then they come back together. And we stop living as like mind separate from body, body separate from spirit, that type of thing. It all becomes this integrated whole, which is really what I learned through Zen and my advanced yoga training was that was the ultimate aim of any kind of a self-development system, was to become whole again, a whole person. It's like the Greek concept of whole person leadership or whole person assumes that you're not whole as a prima facie thing. And that's true, especially in our modern world. We're not whole, right? You've got aspects that are split off, in your personality by the way you're raised. And so we want to reintegrate and become whole. And then the experience of that wholeness is what I call whole mind, which means your body, mind, and spirit are all one. They're not separate things. It's not like your spirit is something you just haul to church on Sunday and then you leave it be for the next, until next Sunday. And your mind isn't something you just discover while you're reading a book
or, doing a course. It's like your mind and your body are really co-creating this reality together. Right. So I want, when I start training people, I say, first we've got to go within, and we go within through a daily practice. And that practice is an aspect of this 5-mountain training plan. So the practices of internal development are going to be breath control, concentration, mindfulness, meditation, and visualization as our primary. Then witnessing also would be an outcome of all of those processes, where you become stabilized in that witnessing awareness, as opposed to be completely merged with your thoughts and emotion and reactionary, which is what most people are.
Right.
So that turning in then allows you to be more centered and purposeful and clear when you're doing things, right? So you work on the being part of yourself so that when you're doing, you bring more being into it, more beingness. And that could also be said another way, that when you're doing things, when you're performing, you're more present, you're clear about why you're doing things, and you are able to bring more power into your decision making, because you've got that kind of separation between the thoughts and emotions, and the ability to curate the quality and the directionality of your thoughts and emotions. Super powerful. Yeah. And so that process in and of itself leads individuals closer and closer to their true calling. And I truly believe, like, the overarching philosophy of Unbeatable Mind, if you could, cull it down to 3 words, would be self-mastery and service. I guess that's 4 words. Self-mastery in service.
Yeah.
So self-mastery is the development of the 5 mountains and turning inward to curate the quality of your thinking and your emotional life, to clean up the emotional baggage. And what you do in your life is a service. But that service has to be done in a way that's in complete alignment with who you are and your calling, and not just, in service of making money or in service of your ego, right? So the two work together like hand in a glove.
Right. Now, and not only have you helped individuals who, are going through their daily lives, or those high achieving individuals, but you also used it with the Courage Foundation to use those frameworks to help individuals that are dealing with PTSD.
Right.
You had a 70% success rate in healing those with post-traumatic growth. How does that differ from like the normal everyday individual, or is it the same kind of philosophy?
It's the same philosophy. This type of training can help an individual go from good to great, or great to utterly fulfilled, but it can also be used, or it's every bit as legitimate to be and helpful to help someone get out of a complete rut that they're in their life. And make no mistakes, that's someone who's suffering from post-traumatic stress is in a serious rut. They're in a mental and emotional rut, and they don't see a way out of it. So our methodology is to kick off relationships with people like the vets, especially with a immersive training, like a 3-day immersive training, which ideally would be in person, but we ended up having to do it virtually, obviously, last year.
Right.
And then in that training, we teach the fundamental methodologies and tools of Unbeatable Mind, like box breathing and the different skills like 5-mountain training and things that I've talked about. And then we put them into a boat crew. So now they've got a team again. And then that boat crew is coached by one of our certified coaches. So now they've got a trusted partner, advisor, mentor, coach who can, answer their questions and help guide them and hold them accountable. And we also, within their boat crew, we assign swim buddies. And so that means every individual has another individual who's got their back. And we make each swim buddy responsible for their other swim buddy, so that, if the other person's falling down, hey, it's my fault. It's my job to help them.
Yeah.
If I'm not there for them, then it's, I'm letting my teammate down, that kind of thing. So, and we do this for a full 12 months, right? So most programs that support vets, there's a lot of really good programs out there, but they're like one and done. You go to an event, you learn yoga and some breathing, and then you're gone. And the problem with that is that these vets go back into their old patterns and their old environments, and they get sucked right back into the same old stuff.
Yeah.
So we want to be there like a safety net. We teach them the skills, but then we have them practice the skills day in and day out. And we have a team, their team holds them accountable, and they come together once a week on their team calls. And their coach holds them accountable and helps them, follow this journey. And so we've got a whole 12 months to work with them. And so the purpose finding, the teamwork, the accountability, and the practices of self-awareness, and giving them a mission again, all are extraordinarily useful. And so generally speaking, if we can get someone to really buy into it after the first 30 days, then we can help them transform back to a really healthy individual.
That's amazing. It's kind of like when you're talking about the first 2 days is the hardest of Hell Week.
Right.
It's almost like the last few days of that training is the hardest, because you're not in the environment that is able to help you. But I love that it's 12 months that you guys do that, because
right.
It's not an easy process. I understand that.
No.
The best part, I love how it transitions from the unbeatable mind, the individual, to now you just had a book that you put out, Staring Down the Wolf. Amazing book. And in the book, you talk about 7 aspects to be able to form a great team with elite individuals. And it's amazing that you transition from you getting that elite mindset to now being able to create this team. The 7 aspects are courage, trust, respect, growth, excellence, resilience, and alignment. How does that correlate into that unbeatable mind? How do you transition from getting somebody to that elite mindset and then having this team of elite individuals?
Well, the general premise here is that, first, unbeatable mind can be used as a personal development or leadership development. It really is the same, because in both cases, we're trying to become the best version of ourselves. Right. And when it comes to self-development, that's just because I want to become the best version of myself so I can serve profoundly. But when I'm serving, I'm leading. All of us are leaders. We're leading our family, we're leading our teams. And even if we're being led, we're leading. In the SEALs, we had part of our ethos was ready to lead, ready to follow, never quit. So that leadership and that followership role are always just this continuum, right? Always this continuum. So in one moment I might be following, this moment I'd be leading. And even if I'm following, I'm leading myself, and I'm leading by example. So through our SEAL Fit training, we developed a really unique skill in being able to develop leadership and team skills, because when we do our events, everything is built for the team, right? Meaning there's nothing that you can really accomplish alone in our Kokoro camp. You have to be able to accept help and offer help and be a great teammate. And then we change up leadership roles all the time. And we just prove this principle that you got to be ready to lead, ready to follow, and never quit. But if you can get that principle along with some of the others, like earn your trident every day, that means just show up, put out 100% every single day. And that is where, and that takes courage, but that's where great trust and respect is developed. So, and the other thing I'll have to say is, nobody really develops alone. Right? It's not like we're not, the time of being able to go into a cave and just be a yogi or, hide from society and develop is gone. And those people, they developed great mental clarity and skills, but they were lousy teammates because they just did not interact with others very well. That needs to be trained, right? There's a lot of emotional development that needs to happen in order to be a really good teammate and leader, and to not be the limiting factor in your team's potential, really. Right. So what we do is we use these 7 commitments, and they're like practices, and there's a positive quality and a negative quality to each. And the negative quality is, in order to develop courage, you've got to stare down your fear of doing hard things, right? And failure. Right. And a lot of people don't want to do hard things. They don't want to fail, especially leaders, because they think they're supposed to be seen as perfect or as the right, and they're risk averse. But then that limits your team, because teams need to be challenged. Teams need to have a risk tolerance that is relatively high so they can learn and grow. So if you're the leader whose doesn't have the risk tolerance because you haven't stared down your fear of failure and some sort of consequences from that, then you're going to be the one that's limiting the team. And I saw this in the SEALs, leaders who were unwilling to really put it out there for the team. Their teams didn't perform very well because they weren't taking risks and they became risk averse themselves. Stuff like that. So we recognize that leaders can't develop without their teams, and that the team members will develop faster when the leader develops with them, alongside them in the Petri dish. So our whole company Unbeatable now is about offering we call these boat crews, the same term we use for the Courage Foundation, where we bring in either a corporate team where they're all in one team into these boat crews, and they get busy learning all the principles and exposing their vulnerabilities and weaknesses to each other and shoring each other up and supporting each other. Or you can come in as an individual to the company and we'll put you in a boat crew, or you can recruit your own boat crew, It's a really cool model, and we're just kind of kicking it off in the last year or two. We had great success with it. Now we're finding success with some pretty big, companies. Like we got a proposal out with SpaceX for their new Inspiration 4. It's actually Inspiration 4 is the civilian flight that's going to take 4 civilians up around the Earth, and there's others, other companies that we're starting to really bring this concept to. So we're really pretty excited about it. It's very, very effective.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, having read most of your books and going through some of that training, it's amazing to see, the things that you're going to be putting out. I can only imagine. Make sure you go to unbeatablemind.com or sealfit.com. You can also go to markdevine.com. Mark, one of the things that I have always admired about what you put into your books is you really speak to, and you had mentioned this earlier, you really speak to the general person and let them feel like they can get to that elite status. How was that possible? How were you able to manifest that to be able to speak to an individual who may have never been in the military, who may have never been elite in anything?
Yeah, that term elite, sometimes I wish I never used it. It just means to be the best version of yourself possible. And in that regard, everyone's got the capacity to be the best version of themselves as possible, which makes them elite, right? And so everyone, and I used to say even a Navy SEAL starts with the first set of push-ups, right?
Right.
I've seen guys come through my training who I'm like, there's no way. In fact, my cousin, who's a great guy, when he first showed up saying, "Hey, Uncle Mark, I want to be a Navy SEAL," to my training center, I was like, oh, gosh, this is going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one. And it took like 9 months into the 18 months that he stayed with us and trained with us before he turned the corner and suddenly started to show that fire in the belly. And I said, okay, well, maybe this guy can really do it. And he ended up making it. He's at SEAL Team 4 right now.
Wow.
And he was every bit as average as anyone who's thinking, well, I can't do that. He was definitely that, right, when he came in. And I probably was when I started too. It was my fire in the belly. I was probably fitter than him. And in a lot of regards, I was more educated because I had a master's degree. But, I was from a small town in upstate New York, grew up in a chaotic family with an angry dad. And, I had a lot of shadow to overcome and a lot of, self-esteem issues to overcome. And I did it, but I did it because of these practices. I did it by looking within and recognizing that inside is this awesome power that we all have, not just Mark Devine.
Right.
We all have it. And you can tap into that power. It's our God, given gift. And we can develop our mind and we can develop our body and we can learn to align with our calling. And when we do that, we are then elite because that's rare. And that's what humanity needs us to do. That's the reason we're on this planet. Right. And that's what I want to teach people. And you don't have to want to be a Navy SEAL or anything besides, let's say, a mom or a dad. And tons of my clients are are just moms and dads, or they're business leaders or entrepreneurs, or, so I just gave a speech to a bunch of superintendents, and man, it was a great group of people. And I just gave a speech yesterday I was on stage at Tony Robbins Wealth Mastery in front of 4,000 people of all walks of life, and kids. Even. It was just awesome experience. Really cool.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Mark, I appreciate you being on the show today and giving a lot of wisdom. I always end the show with 3 different questions. They're the same ones for each guest, so it kind of gives them an idea of from the CEO to Mark Divine to the pro athlete, what the difference is. So here's the first question for you. What would be one big suggestion or advice that you would tell to your 18-year-old self?
Trust my gut.
Page 12. Trust your gut. I love that. Here's the second one for you. With people going through all the challenging and hard times on many different levels, what are 2 daily habits that you think that they should put into their life right now to start living forward?
Well, first is, you'll probably know I'm going to say this, but to develop a daily habit of breath training. So I call it box breathing, and learning, taking time, minimum 5 minutes up to 20 minutes when you wake up in the morning, to just breathe in through your nose to a 4 count or a 5 count, hold your breath for 4 or 5 count, exhale for the same duration, and then hold your breath. And this is an incredible practice to de-stress and to calm your body, mind down, and to develop mental clarity. And this is the first thing I teach all those Navy SEAL trainees, and it's a game changer. Yeah. And just the proof is just to do it for 30 days and come back and report your results, and you'll experience an entirely different relationship to anxiety, to stress. Your body starts to come back into balance. Everything just gets better and easier with this practice. So start a daily practice of box breathing. Right. And then secondly is to take time during the day to just slow down and pause and declutter your environment. And what I mean by that is just stop the email, stop the texting, stop the social media, go outside and take a walk, right? Just stop. Disconnect from all digital devices and go outside and take a walk, because we're developing this like massive distraction hysteria because there's just so much information coming at us, and the apps are all gamified to keep you distracted and to keep you at dis-ease, actually, because you're constantly looking for that next dopamine hit. So just unplug from all that crap and go outside for a walk and just breathe deeply and feel the fresh air and the sun against your face, and sit down and just observe what's going on. Don't do anything.
Enjoy life.
Don't just stop doing for a while and just be. Just allow yourself to be. It's incredibly rewarding.
I love it. Last question here for you. If you had the chance to have coffee with 3 people, they can be deceased or alive, at a firehouse table, so nothing is off the table to talk about, who would they be?
Oh, man, that's such a cool question. One of them would be Leonidas, King Leonidas, the Spartan king. I would definitely want to sit down and talk to him. The other one would be Jesus. I'd love to have a conversation with Jesus. And then the final one would be this guy named Babaji, who's one of the most advanced yogis, who is considered to be kind of the deathless yogi. He had mastered his body to such an extent that, apparently he just keeps on living, So I'd like to learn how to do that.
Wow.
Learn how he did it. Let's put it that way.
I was going to say, you got 3 people at that coffee table that'll be able to help you with a lot of different things.
That's right.
Well, Mark, if you
could arrange that meetup, I'd appreciate
it. Give me a week or 2, and then I'll see what I can do.
All right.
Well, make sure you go to unbeatablemind.com or sealfit.com and find out more from Mark. He has so many things going on, and everything is going to only benefit you to be a better person. Mark, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.